Great. We'll go to our first portion of the afternoon. We'll ask Christine Hill from McKesson to step forward. We're going to be talking about transitioning from military service to the civilian career fields. And we'll also have one of our honorees from this evening join her after her presentation so we can have a greater depth of discussion around the experience of actual military transition to the civilian workforce. So Graciela Tiscareño-Sato will be joining us as well. Christine, thank you.
Good afternoon. You want to? You're welcome to. Come on down, Graciela. We'll make it a little more interactive throughout. How about that? So my name's Christine Hill. I'm a proud Latina and 25-year Navy spouse. Thrilled to be here. My full-time role at McKesson, I lead talent strategy for several parts across the enterprise. I also am the national co-chair and executive sponsor for our military ERG, so Employee Resource Group, and have a long history of assisting veterans in transition. So honored to be here, honored to have you with me to partner on this. Wanted to walk through a few things as we talk about a transition from the service into the civilian world. So everybody knows that you have to go through TAP. Do we have anybody here that is actively transitioning right now? Nobody? Wow.
Anybody married to it?
Anybody married to someone that's transitioning?
I have a twin brother.
You have a twin brother who's
Yeah.
transitioning? Okay. Perfect. What service?
He was in the Marines.
In the Marines. Congratulations. Any recently transitioned vets? Everybody's already landed? Okay. Well, this will bring back some memories then, perhaps, you know? Ah,
So I've been through TAP, so I
okay.
know where it
So we might bring back some
Little wild
memories
card.
there, right? Okay. Okay, perfect. So we want to start with your job search or veterans job search. You want to start early. Thank you very much. You want to start early. Establish your career objective. Make sure he's doing this. Not when you're ready to go through TAP. You should think about what you want to do, and it doesn't always have to be what you did in the military. I think we see a lot of transitioning veterans think, well, I did logistics in the military for 20 years, and so I probably should just look for a job in logistics, when in fact they have a skill set that could apply to a completely different career field, and they might not realize that because they speak military and they don't understand civilian world. So it's really important for them to know themselves. What are deal breakers for them? What do they want in a company's culture? And conducting targeted research on the organizations with whom they might seek employment. So Graciela, you are a veteran yourself. Can you talk some about how early you had to start your search when you chose to transition?
Yeah, that's an important question. So I'll start by saying that my occupation in the Air Force was as a KC-135 aircraft navigator. So there was never going to be a thing, I'm going to do the same thing on the outside because it doesn't exist. So right there, step one, a lot of things don't exist. So then it's the same question of what skills do apply. And so I was very lucky that I had a mentor group of women professionals, including 2 women who had just gotten out 6 months before me, and one who had been out 10 years. And so they were holding my hand. I was networking. I was stationed in Spokane, Washington at Fairchild Air Force Base. So I would say I started networking immediately when I landed in the community by doing speaking at a conference. And I just started meeting people because that's what I do. But as far as thinking about actually getting out, I would say it's probably 3 years. And I was like, hey guys, I'm coming up on a year before my contract ends as in flight status. And so I was going to lunches. And so for me, it was ongoing, but really thinking about what you just said. What do I want to do? What even exists?
Right.
Because I went from my house to Berkeley on a scholarship and then straight into the Air Force. So I don't know what exists, right? So that's the first question, is what even exists? And so my network told me that before you start looking, before you do resumes, before you even think about any of that, let's introduce you to people so you can understand what exists. So years.
Wonderful. Years. Wonderful. And so honing the narrative, I'm going to come over here and sit next to you so we can talk a little bit. I think honing the narrative is something that a lot of transitioning veterans also might struggle with, not understanding how important it is. Those of you that went through TAP, probably you had that standard format of the resume. They told you to write it this way, and that talk about your loyalty as like your top quality and skill set, right? And it is painful. I can spot a TAP resume a mile away. and they all have the same words, all the same things to describe it. And those are all true, right? But they're not relevant to a position. They're not buzzwords in the corporate world now. And TAP has not progressed as quickly as the civilian world has. And as a result, we find our brothers and sisters who have served falling through the cracks because they're not well enough equipped to even get a seat at the table to have the conversation to knock the hiring manager's socks off. We talk about elevator pitch, but I'm also going to talk to you about building a brand because they go hand in hand. One can't exist without the other. So do you want to talk some about that?
Yeah, so I train veterans across the country in creating, becoming epic storytellers of their value, personal branding. And I have a slide that has an elevator and then okay? Because I'm making the distinction that a personal brand that's very targeted is not an elevator pitch. And you will always hear about elevator pitches as a generic way to be interesting to whoever's in the elevator. So that's fine if you want to be generically interesting to whoever's in the elevator, but that's not personal branding. And so I distinguish between the two because my skill set when I left the Air Force, I completed my master's degree. Because again, I knew I was not going to be a navigator, so I needed to have something relevant. So I had a master's degree in international business and marketing. And so I've been able to take that skill set and help veterans really understand that what you're doing is a marketing exercise. Everything you do when you're getting out to try to get someone to interview you so you can have a new career, it's all a marketing exercise. But you don't learn marketing in the military. You don't learn marketing at TAP. There's no marketing professionals involved in that. So this branding idea is, it's not about you. We hate talking about ourselves, right? Like, oh, I don't talk about myself. So you're not talking about yourself. You are articulating your value, but to give value to someone else. So a brand is exactly that. It's a targeted message for the hiring manager for cybersecurity, for the hiring manager for Microsoft, the hiring manager at Google, whatever, right? Pharma, whatever you're trying to do next. So the personal brand starts with that audience, and then you selectively choose the product attributes, again, more marketing language, of yourself to intrigue that audience. And so that's what I do. And we have an exercise, and it results in a 30-second story about that veteran for a specific audience. I always say your personal brand is a story you tell to attract specific people to you. So if you happen to be in an elevator with somebody who's hiring for cybersecurity and you happen to whip out your generic elevator pitch, then you just got really lucky and you said something relevant to this person. But that's not the way it works in the world to try to get somebody to interview you. Much more targeted. So that's how I would distinguish those between the two.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And social media presence. So that we all know that's really important. LinkedIn, other areas. What has been your experience seeing transitioning veterans engage in that? I know personally, I'm seeing where they'll have a profile. Sometimes there's a picture, sometimes there's not. It doesn't have a lot of connections. It doesn't have a lot of information about what they've done and their skill set. What do you see?
And then when they do have something, it's all sounding the same as the other person.
Right.
So there's no differentiation, right? Because, I'll say it again, what is a LinkedIn profile? It is a marketing deliverable, is the words I've used. So how many of you are working in marketing? Okay. So I like to use this example. Christine, you're working at my company and I want you to create me a website because we're going to do a milk campaign. Go.
So I would ask, what's your desired outcome? Who's your audience? Who do you want to target? What's our market share?
What kind of milk?
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tell you that. I'm just going to tell you to go do a website. Because that's what TAP's doing.
Exactly.
Go do a resume. You don't know about industries. You don't know what functional roles exist. You don't know what professional network. Go do your LinkedIn profile. It's the same thing. And then the veteran's like, oh my God, what do I put here? No idea, right? So that's the discomfort that veterans will express because like, you're asking me to do a thing and to communicate about myself in a vacuum. And it's painful, and then when they do it, it's terrible, and it's filled with acronyms, and then it sounds exactly like the next person. So that's why, don't do that. Don't do that until you have learned some landscape that's out there, and this is what my veteran network did for me. Okay? You know, talk to logistics, talk to ops. I was flying for the Air Force. I was aeronautical rated combat aviation veteran. Okay, that has nothing to do with anything. So that identity, it's gone, okay? Doesn't matter. So what am I gonna say, right? And so my network was like reeling me back in. They're like, no, stop. You need to go in what is operations in the civilian world? What is logistics? And then the people who knew me, they said, you're not operations.
Right, I couldn't see you at ops at all.
You're not ops. I'm like, that's what it's called here. You are marketing, communications, strategic communications, that's who you are. And now you have to decide, is that at the strategic level, the product level, is it transnational, is it multilingual, what is it? Because there's all the flavors of that function. So the most important thing is meeting people who can help you learn that. That's it.
And I
That's like
think
the first step.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I think, sessions like this and organizations like ALVA are great opportunities to build and broaden that network. And for you all that have already made that transition, or those of you who are supporters and representing some of our sponsor partners, it's a great way also for you to lend some of that knowledge to some of our active duty or currently transitioning fellow members, so that they are learning and growing and showing up and building their brand in the right way.
It's the most important thing. If I didn't have this guidance from these women, I would have just been doing the generic resume and putting it on servers and then getting no calls and then feeling desperate and terrible and lose my self-worth. Because I would think nobody cares. Because that's right. But these women and this network was like, come back. And they're like, meet people, learn functions, learn about the civilian world, and thank God that they did that. So that's what we can all do, is just reel back those, and I have to say this, okay? My supervisor in the Air Force, Chris McDonald, I just talked to him, oh my God. He says, I wish I would have stayed in touch with you when you got out, because I watched you go out there and land as a global marketing manager in Silicon Valley for a technology company, just like you said you would. Transnational work, using 3 languages, meeting people, marketing, briefing, all the stuff I said, writing. And meanwhile, when he got out, he did not do this. He says, what is it, this is his words, okay? What is it about men leaving the military thinking, I can figure this out by myself? What is it about that, right? Meanwhile, the sisterhood, we're like, hey, girls, I need some help, right? And he says, I wish I would have stayed in touch with you because you would have been instrumental in my transition. And he got out, struggled for a couple of years, and went right back into the Air Force and the civilian service. And he hated it, okay? But he has this massive regret. And he said, what is it about men leaving the military that makes them think I want to look like I can figure it out? You have not done this before. Please reach out to each other. Please reach out to us. So thank you for saying that. I wanted to repeat Chris's words. I just talked to him last week, and it's present on my mind. What is it about men leaving the military?
Wow.
Okay, tell your brother.
I'm glad you did that. I remember when my husband was retiring, and he would come home from TAP every day and talk through, well, they said this and what do you think? And my role at the time, I ran HR for a company up here, and I would tell him, every night I would unteach him everything that he had learned that day. Like, no, that's not true.
How lucky was this man? Seriously, how lucky was this man to have you in his life?
Well, I make sure to tell him that.
Wow.
I also was concerned because I knew that there were many other people around the table that didn't have that. And what were they going to walk out into the world and do or say or not do and not say? And I think, learning to identify any networking opportunity, I say that anytime you meet someone, it doesn't matter what they do, you find something in common with them and you make some sort of connection. So I never met you before today, and we've spent an hour chatting about books and children and transition stories and all these wonderful things, and we're going to stay in touch after today. And that is kind of just a happenstance networking opportunity. So she can leverage me for things, I can leverage her for things, right? You all have met one another. If you haven't, make sure that you do before you leave today, right? Because even this is a great networking opportunity. Ask questions, build relationships, right? And I think if you take that back to when you were active duty, you really had to build strong relationships very quickly. You had to learn how to trust one another. And that's really important too as you're leveraging and building that network, because they help lift you.
Yes. And one thing, I'm curious, what is your name with the brother?
Jennifer.
You're Jennifer. What's the name of your brother?
Gershon.
Gershon. Okay. So Does Gershon love networking?
No, he does.
Okay, bingo. All right, so just that word makes us go, oh, gross, right? Because we don't know what it is. Because I certainly was not networking on the flight line. We went out to the jet and we flew the airplane, okay? And then we came back and did a debrief. Nobody's networking. So we get creepy crawly feelings about that very concept, okay? So we reel it all the way back in, just that idea makes us feel gross. So instead, I say the words you just said, establishing relationships with new people who can teach you things. Creating new relationships with people on the outside who know that industry. I avoid the word networking because it gives everybody a creepy feeling, right? Even though we know that's what we're doing, it's just I come back to how much when people told me networking, I'm going to cocktail parties and networking. Because I always thought that networking was you go to a party and you talk about yourself. Or you go to a party because you need a job and you're asking for a job. And anybody who has ever been to an event where someone's like so desperate for a job and they sound like it, what do? We avoid them. They're creepy, right? So that's not what you want. So it's the relationship. It's the putting the deposit in the bank, the relationship bank before you ever need to withdraw. To say, hey, now I'm actually looking for work. Do you know anybody who's hiring, right? But if you don't have relationships, you just sound like a networking desperate person, right? So it's just that whole approach that also you need to think about. I've had people say, well, why should I hang out with civilians and learn to talk like them? They're stupid. I've heard veterans tell me this. So literally thinking that veterans are stupid. Why should I talk to them so they can understand me? And so it's all of that. And it's bringing it back to meeting people who can teach you the things that you're missing because you're missing.
And frankly, once you make a transition, continuing to rely on your network or your friends or colleagues as thought partners. I find that I do that quite often, either folks that I have helped transition or prior clients that I've served in prior HR roles, where I'll just bounce a question off. Sometimes you just need a good thought partner, and your network is great. Also, if there's somebody that's in a similar industry with whom you've developed this great relationship, how's AT&T doing that? How are you guys thinking about AI? Right? Without revealing trade secrets, but it's great to have thought partnerships.
Yeah, just to keep the conversation and relationship going. But this is a very important point. So veterans also tend to be very transactional in this activity. I'm getting out, so I have to go do this thing to go job searching, okay? And then once you get a job, you're like, okay, I'm done. And then they never go back to LinkedIn or wherever, and they don't go back to the people who helped them because it's a transactional thing, right? So don't let your brother do this, okay? Because once you meet those people that are helping you through this process, I have this chart that I show when I do workshops, and it's like the more people that you know, the higher your career success. The less people that you know and the more bubble that you stay in, it's less career success. As like a Forbes article, job opportunities, compensation, all of it. And it's what it's telling you is when you have landed in your job, in your new career, I don't want to say job, I say new career, okay? Staying in touch with the people who help you get there, or new people, as Christine just described, that's going to be where your next opportunity comes from. Someone calls you and says, hey, I remember a couple years ago you got out and you went to McKesson to work in such and such industry, okay? There's this opportunity over here or over there, right? And people who know you can call you with opportunities. Or do you know somebody who is looking, right? Because that's that network continuing to embrace you. But so many veterans have a transactional approach to this. They got their job, they're done. I'm not going on LinkedIn, I'm not looking for a job. I'm like, oh, again. Okay, because it's not about you're only there when you're looking for a job, but that's how we think about it, just to give them life experience.
Right. And activity too. So I really enjoy some of my connections on LinkedIn when they're sharing relevant articles that have come out that I may not have seen, something in HBR or a recent study. And so that's what shows them in your feed is that activity, and the same holds true for you. So if you're not active on your profile, absent updating your profile, then people aren't going to see you on their feed. And guess what? Everybody has 500 plus connections in that little circle these days. And so are you really the first person that's going to come to mind if you're a part of someone's network? And so make sure that you're a meaningful part of their network just as they are to yours.
And also, maintain real relationships offline as well, because, if you're just only online, and a lot of people who are, do you really know them? There's so many. Do you actually really know them? Like, call people, right? But also just understand that it is it is this beautiful array of knowledge and people that just depend on you. I'm thinking of a guy who got out here in Maryland, in Baltimore, Chris Powell. I trained him in one of my first workshops. And I introduced him, after he got his branding, he was articulating what he was looking for next. I said, oh, I'm going to introduce you to somebody who used to be the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, a friend of mine. And so he's like, why would a guy like that want to talk to me? I'm just an Army veteran. Because he really thinks himself as just an Army veteran. I'm like, because this guy is the guy that people call when new companies come into the state. We're creating a new manufacturing center or a new headquarters. Who do you know, right? And so you want to be in his network because he gets that phone call. So that's why he wants to know you. You're not just an Army veteran. You're a veteran with a lot of talent that he wants to know, right? And so explaining the value that they have intrinsically just by having served with a skill set, but that is going to be much more valuable when you are known to other people. In fact, I actually quote Sonia's up in my workshop. Page 218 of her biography, okay? Virtue and obscurity is rewarded only in heaven. To be successful in this life, you must be known to other people. Tell your brother. Okay? Because other people knowing about you and what they repeat about you, which is what you put out there about yourself, that's where the next opportunity, the next relationship, the next connection comes from. And civilians have been doing this since forever.
Yeah. And to your point, what you don't say, or if they don't hear or feel your presence, or if they find it disingenuous, that's what's going to remain in their mind when they think about you for that next opportunity, and they're going to move to the next person. Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if anybody has any questions so far on what we've shared. Or are you thinking about your brother and like something that he might need, or if he was here, might ask?
No, I think everything that you said I've taken, and I know I'm gonna go and call him and be like, you need to do this. Yeah.
The stuff is important. The interviewing piece.
What's that?
The interviewing piece is
Yeah,
important.
so interviewing is our next kind of section. And one thing I tell everybody, not just transitioning veterans, but I find that they struggle with this concept more than those who have all kind of grown up in the civilian world. You're interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you. Treat it like a conversation, do your research ahead of time, but you need to make sure that that organization is what you're looking for too. So understand yourself. What are your deal breakers? What are you looking for in a company, in a leader, in your long-term career, and how is that company that you're interviewing going to fulfill that for you? And if it's not a good fit, it doesn't matter if they want to hire you. It's not fitting you and what you want, and you're not going to be happy there. Organizational fit is very important. And so remember that when you go into that interview, it is an interview, but it's you interviewing them.
And
Not the other way.
to really believe that, you have to value yourself.
Absolutely.
And if you're a veteran who's devalued himself or herself, I'm just an Army veteran, okay, we've all heard friends of ours say this, maybe we said it ourselves, that's a very hard pill to swallow, that I can interview them, I'm looking for a fit for me. It's like you get into this mindset, especially if it's been months and months and years and you still haven't found it, you haven't landed, desperation. And then you don't feel like you're really, in a position to like be selective, right? And look for that fit. And that was so important to the people who were mentoring me. I got that message. But I've seen people in year 3, 4, 5, they still haven't found anything, they're sleeping on someone's couch, and they'll just take anything.
Right.
And then that's why, you guys seen the number? Like the percentage of veterans who don't make it to the first year, like 70% of veterans do not make it to the first year anniversary of their first career. They quit. And then by the end of year 2, it's something like 85% are gone. Meaning that 15%, yeah, look at her shocked face. Tell your brother, okay?
Yeah.
This is very true. Okay, so that means that 15% of veterans found the fit enough to last into the second year. It's incredible because they're not doing these things. They're literally just, getting a job. And they're not really taking the time to know themselves and to do networking and do the work to find, and some of these are basic questions like, do you want to be a big fish in a little pond? Okay, do you want to, still be that leader? Or do you want to kind of like, I'm going to go code? in a corner, and I'll come out when I need help. And you're like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do next?
Yeah,
You might want to do that. You might want to hide for a while because you've been so out in front. Right?
Absolutely. Well, my husband took 2 years off because
There
he
you
said,
go.
I just need to do something that has nothing to do with the Navy.
Excellent.
And he said, he finally just said, can I just be a stay-at-home husband for a couple of years?
Yes.
Sure, I would love to not sit in the house. That's fantastic. I'm supportive, right? But you know, I've seen so many folks also overlook the organization's mission and how that fits with what you value. So some organizations are financially driven. There's nothing wrong with that. They're an organization. If you are a very altruistic person and you care about making a difference, you might not be an organizational fit with a company that's driven by the bottom line only. Some organizations are very secure organizations. They're a little more risk averse. If you're looking for longer term security, or a company that's been around for a really long time and has been stable during that time, and that's what you value is the security and long-term growth, that might be a better organization for you. If you're passionate about, you know, helping people and making a difference, you really want to find an organization that is more altruistic in their mission. And you can research all that information. Companies will put it on the investor portion of their website. It's very, very important. I'd also say, you know, as you're interviewing, you know, preparing questions ahead of time that illustrate that you know about the company. You should be researching the company ahead of time. I promise you, they're looking at you. They're looking at you before.
Yeah. I know that's just so important.
And then I always like to touch too on kind of the taboo topic, which is negotiating the offer. Nobody ever wants to say, right, well, I don't want to tell them my number, and I don't want to say, you know, okay, look, you're right, what if they lowball me? You know, I think also I've seen active duty folks as they transition, when they're thinking about how much money they need to make, they forget that a portion of their income while they're active was not taxable. And then they get that same amount and they think they're going to be flat, and then, oh, Uncle Sam takes all of that? That makes a big difference, and the cost of benefits is exponentially higher in the civilian world, right? You're nodding your head. Than is when you're still active. And you want to do fact-based quantifiable research. Anything is negotiable. It's not just about the money. So I do say, you might not want to tell them your specific number, but you should at least give them enough information that you know you guys are playing on the same ball field.
And for the women who are getting out, I'm not even going to start citing all the research on that, but I will just tell you that something like 18% of women negotiate the first offer given to them. It means 82% of women do not. And you're sitting back there going, wow, why are we making them less money? Well, because the men are negotiating every offer they get, and women are not. So that's just another little point to think about. And to your point, you know, role-playing, negotiation moments is also something you can help, especially if you already landed, you're in industry with a veteran friend of yours just getting out. Go ahead, do a little negotiation play. I did this with a lot of my friends. This is what it's going to sound like. We're going to say this, you can say that. You know, and then that way when they do it for real, it's not like some foreign concept. And again, wow, we're a foreign concept for a veteran to negotiate their pay.
Right.
Oh, I actually get a say in it? Yeah.
Or time off, right? A lot of companies will tell you, this is how many, you have this many years of service, this is how much time you get. Most companies will negotiate that. I'm not going to work for a company and because I have less than 5 years of service, I get 2 weeks off. Right? It's not 1980, right? So you shouldn't stand for that either. So go negotiate that. It's a deal breaker for you, right? If you only need 2 weeks off a year, we need to talk. I need to understand your work-life balance.
Yeah, and also, you know, to that point is, I was in an industry, you know, communications industry, where we were employing remote technology. This is way before a pandemic forced it upon us. So I'm like, oh, okay, so if I'm marketing communications that make it possible for you to work from home and from anywhere, then I want to work from home 3 days a week and use that technology. That way I can more confidently and firsthand speak about its benefits as a working mother to our clients, right? So I negotiated working from home using the technology that we were marketing as part of my package. Because again, my network told me to do it. Otherwise I would not be able to do that.
And if you walk a mile in your customer's shoes, you're going to make much better recommendations than they're going to believe.
Right.
You can also identify quirks in the product a lot faster, and you certainly want an employee to identify before a customer.
Exactly.
Right? So it's
I think that Danny's waving us to wrap it up.
Okay.
So what I do want to say is I have 3 copies of a book that has 30 examples of veterans who have written their own personal branding. This is a book that I have written, Brand Before Your Resume, and brand means become relevant, authentic, noticeable, and differentiated. Because we like our acronyms, so I made an acronym of the word brand, before your resume. So I have 3 copies. I'm going to give one to you to give to your brother, and I have 2 other copies for anybody that wants to approach me and say, my sister's getting out, or my dad, or whatever, and I'll just give you a copy and sign it for you. Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Christine, do you want to talk about McKesson real quick?
Sure, absolutely. Ooh, there we go. I'll walk over here so I don't fall. That's wonderful, wouldn't it? So McKesson is almost 200-year-old company. We're a Fortune 10. We're probably the largest company you don't know at all. I didn't know about McKesson. Generally, any COVID vaccine that you've received, McKesson was the distributor of that between the pharmacies and the manufacturer. We also transport the majority of pharmaceuticals, both over-the-counter and prescription pharmaceuticals across the United States, as well as medical supplies. We also have some technology products where we interface between a practice and a pharmacy to gain pre-authorization for your insurance and so forth, so that the pharmacy already knows that everything's approved as soon as your provider puts it in the system, and you don't have to show your card or anything when you get to the pharmacy because it's already fed over. And we also provide all of the technological support for the U.S. Oncology Network. So that is the largest network of oncology practices across the United States. So we provide all of their IT infrastructure and services. So that includes electronic patient records, radiation treatments and therapies and so forth, and that is critical for us because if those networks go down, patients can't receive care. So we have about 72,000 employees globally, fantastic organization. I'm based in our Richmond office, and we're thrilled to be a sponsor and look forward to our continued partnership with ALVA. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
And if people want to learn more about how to explore job opportunities in McKesson, what's the website?
McKesson.com.
McKesson.com.
Also.